So what can the BBC do with the new technology now available? Well, Michael Stevenson is the Joint Head of Factual and Learning at the BBC and is leading the development of e-learning for the BBC. He's the champion of the learning journey. So let's sit back and imagine journeys into learning. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Michael Stevenson.
Well, good afternoon, and let me start by saying what a real pleasure it is to be here. Wales is very much at the forefront of e-learning, both the technology and the content, and I'm sure this conference will do much to keep it there. And BBC Wales, as I know, has been a kind of flag bearer for the BBC at large in digital education. And I was closely involved with the birth of digital television here just 3 or 4 short years ago, and it's a thrill to help the BBC in Wales forward into digital learning in the early years of the 21st century. I wanted to say a few things, first about e-learning as a whole, what it is, with some caveats. Second, to offer a kind of outline of the BBC's own thinking about e-learning and of how the BBC, working with partners, can offer journeys into learning. And thirdly, just a few specific examples, yes, with adults, but also with children, about how our work aligns with wider priorities for policymakers. So those insights into e-learning first. I guess that certainly by this stage in the afternoon, most of you here are pretty committed to the potential for e-learning. Well, for the teacher, clearly a massive resource, a tool with endless capability, a new take on lesson management. For the learner, interactivity, a new method of engagement, the pull of digital for the screen generation, particularly the most disaffected. And for the e-learning provider, a new approach to developing resources with really limitless possibilities. I think all of us who've worked in TV have come to see not only the power but also the limitations of what is a linear medium for education. Interactivity, the new media are flexible. They give that essential characteristic of dynamic interactivity that really can, I think, inspire and enthuse learners of every age. But, and here's a big but, can we be sure it works? And do we know how? Well, there's been some early research, and I think there's a pretty clear correlation proven now between ICT usage and achievement in schools. But I don't think any of us would say the research is sufficiently robust yet. We need a much better understanding and more certainty. It's really not very difficult to see how e-learning supports the more mechanical aspects of learning, how it provides a superb data bank of knowledge, how it even helps develop an understanding of skills. But can we really be sure it aids human creativity? How can it best be used to support human and social interactivity, which some fear could get lost in a world dominated by screens? How do we get the balance right, and how do we get the best out of the e-learning system? How do we ensure it's a tool and not the master? Well, we really don't know all those answers, and this has to be an area where the BBC will work in partnership with teachers, research bodies, government agencies, other providers in the industry. It's in all of our interests, I think, to find out. Now, there clearly is a demand for e-learning. We know this from the growth in the e-learning market. We know it from the take-up of the BBC's own online learning services. Our formal learning sites for kids and for adults are picking up now 6.2 million hits a week, and that excludes all the wider informal learning in our science or history or nature sites. Learning sites are now the third most popular destination for BBC Interactive after news and sport. So we know there's a great appetite for more content and for content that offers more. And our experience of talking to teachers and our contact with organisations shows us really immense enthusiasm for what lies ahead. But maybe we're simply talking to the converted. The people we need to get through to, surely, are the most reluctant, the people to whom we need to say, we'll support you with training and practical backup. And again, that's something the BBC wants to be involved in through programmes such as WebWise for Teachers. We need to prevent any possible perception that e-learning is a sort of substitute for teaching. It's not. We should say loudly and clearly, it's not a surrogate. E-learning is a tool, not a takeover. It's certainly not an alternative to recruiting good quality teachers. What we also know is that digital access is growing. In Wales, for example, I understand all schools now have internet access, and there are ambitious targets for broadband connectivity supported by money from the National Assembly. There's growth in web access in homes as well. About 45% of all homes now have access to the net, mostly through the PC. And some, but not all, think the spread of web TV will help take it up further. But my worry, I think, is about the inequalities in provision. The danger of the digital divide looms ever greater. Now, to a large extent, that's not for the BBC to sort. It's a public policy issue for government and a commercial challenge for those areas of the industry developing the infrastructure. But this really is of crucial importance to a public service broadcaster. We made our way in the radio and television age with universal services, services free at the point of use to everybody who paid a license fee. I really hope that that offer can be maintained in the digital world and in the world of the net. That too has to be a democratic medium. Now, we can do a lot to make sure that our content's attractive in order to support this drive to digital. We can make it available across all possible platforms. And beyond that, we can reach out through public infrastructure into the parts of the community that don't have access in the home. We'll come to that in a moment or two. So if those are the three insights into e-learning, how might we apply them at the BBC? Well, three main planks to our new approach. The first is this, that we have recognised fundamentally the value of the new technology in learning. Online is now fully fledged as the third medium at the BBC, and educational broadcasting is multimedia. And online is increasingly the medium of choice when it comes to offering something new or experimental. Some of our most innovative learning for kids now relies on online, whether it's Bitesize or AS Guru, CBBC Newsround, what have you. And not just for children, it's online learning for adults, science, history, languages, health, work, personal skills. So, though the most ambitious manifestation of the BBC's e-learning plans is what we've called a broadband digital curriculum, and more on that in a moment, the groundwork is already laid with a great range of e-learning projects. The second thing is that, supported by this new technology, the BBC is trying to raise its game in education overall. I've always felt that of the three big things the BBC got asked to do in the 1920s, we did pretty well with news and we did pretty well with entertainment. We've always been there with education, but have we made it as central as the other two? I'm not sure we have, but the challenge of this century is to make sure we do. So internally, we're working to spread the education message right across the BBC by making education, interactive education, an integral part of all of our programme making. It's not to say we don't still have very important dedicated education programme makers. Many of them ex-teachers who continue, I'm glad to say, to talk about learning outcomes and underlying pedagogy, normally to the complete bafflement of the rest of the organisation. But there's a huge amount of cross-fertilisation now between producers of every sort, whatever their area or genre, and the education teams, especially, I think, in education and children's entertainment. But even beyond that, education executives, as we call them, now sit in every part of the BBC, in my own division, Factual and Learning, but others too, and there are close links between the different parts of the United Kingdom, not least here in Wales. And third, bringing together these points, the technology and the higher profile in the BBC as a whole for learning, we've got a new approach which we call 360-degree commissioning and production. The idea is, don't think of the web stuff as some sort of afterthought when you've made the programme. Conceive of what you can do interactively, whether it's on television or online, right at the outset as an integral part of a 360-degree project. Now, one of the best examples of this, I guess, was our autumn venture into the seas around the world, the Blue Planet. which was a successful series on BBC One. And I just thought, really, because it's late on a Friday, you might enjoy as much as I would seeing a minute of that series from last October.
Dwarfed by the vast expanse of the open ocean, the biggest animal that has ever lived on our planet. A blue whale, 30 meters long and weighing over 200 tons. It's far bigger than even the biggest dinosaur. Its tongue weighs as much as an elephant. Its heart is the size of a car. And some of its blood vessels are so wide that you could swim down them. Its tail alone is the width of a small aircraft's wings.
I would die to have got that shot. Well, alongside the TV series, there's a chance now to go much further on the internet. Now, while the program itself is there to inspire, I think the point of the web is to encourage users to engage and to interact. And users come here having seen, if you remember from the series, a 30-second trail after each of Attenborough's programs that brings them to this site. And the homepage is clearly branded to make that all the easier. So, taking my life in my hands, I'll take you to the second of the programs, which was about Alien Planet, the deepest of the deep-sea creatures, and I think one of the most inspiring of the programs that Attenborough made. And the point here is to offer people interactive learning around marine biology without telling them. So, if I just click through to the game itself, and the game's called Diving to the Abyss, and the goal is to explore the three main zones as you descend into the deep ocean. The twilight zone, between 200 meters and 1,000 meters, the dark zone, between 1,000 meters and 4,000 meters, and the deep abyssal plain at 4,000 meters. I'm afraid you're seeing more of me than I would wish you to do, and less than I would wish you to do of the screen itself, but we'll see what I can show you of this. So my task is to grab a creature, and I've grabbed the lobate Ctenophore, of which I'll take a sample. And what I'm now going to try and do is work out what kind of creature this is, how it might be classified by various physical attributes. And I've got a choice. I might think that it's predominantly a silvery body, or that it produces luminescent light, upward-looking eyes, detects vibrations of prey. I have to tell you, I haven't got a clue, but I'll go for silvery body and see what happens. I thought that might happen. Yes, you knew that, of course. What distinguishes the lobate Ctenophore is that it swims using cilia. So, having got that far, I've given you some sort of sense of what I'm trying to do here, which is to build up my own personal understanding of these extraordinary creatures that I've just been watching on BBC Two. And just to, I won't have another go, just to show you where this learning journey, so-called, winds up, I think I can go to the Take It Further page, or perhaps I can't. That's right, because here we're talking about a number of things. Firstly, the range of academic courses. We built two just for this series with the Open University and Hull University, where you can actually get an e-learning qualification. You pay a small sum to do so, but it's built around the assets of Attenborough's series. How you might, if you were a teacher, relate all of this to key stages 1, 2, 3 and 4 science, and where, for a UK-wide guide, you might go to take your learning further with FE colleges or marine museums or what have you. Well, I'll just try and lose that. The Blue Planet Learning Challenge, as we called it, effectively quadrupled the traffic to the BBC's Natural History site. And for those who wanted to go the full distance on the learning journey, as I say, there were those Hull and OU courses linked to the series. Now, we're still evaluating who learnt what, and one of the most important things in this game is to know that, not simply content yourself with page impressions, though those did get to about 1 million a week at the height of the series. What we do know is that of the many people who went to Hull University to do the e-learning course, about 3/4 of them were deep-sea divers, which tells you something about some people's obsession. And also the care that we need to take with offering too much that's too deep, because you simply address people's own preferred specialisms rather than offering something which is broader. What else have we done in the same vein? Well, we offered a learning journey both on television, interactive television, and online with Walking with Beasts, which worked particularly well as a family learning offering. We've done the same with first aid, history, confidence building, languages. Genetics, we've just shown a series on BBC Two called How to Build a Human, built on the Human Genome series. There too, a learning journey online, which got people to take part in what is one of the most controversial debates of our age. This was reaching fewer people, I think, about 1/3 of a million hits to the website a week. Here we've built an e-learning course with King's College London. The next things coming up, gardening, music, parenting, personal finance, more on health, plus localised learning journeys. And here in Wales, importantly, I think, the BBC is piloting a learning journey to let people understand the natural history of their own environment. Working with a range of partners, including the National Botanic Garden of Wales, the BBC will launch the site this summer, concentrating, I think, on southwest Wales. If all goes well, we'd hope to extend that to other parts of Wales and then out to the United Kingdom as a whole. We do have a unique position, I think, at the BBC in offering this sort of approach. We can pull in people via television and via radio, analogue and digital, through national, regional and local services, and we can make use of our tremendous archive. But I don't think we want simply to do learning for learning's sake, learning without definition, learning without objectives. And I'm very keen that the BBC can tie this in to the wider priorities of policymakers as a whole, both here, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and in England. As a publicly funded public service broadcaster, we do feel we've got a responsibility to develop our learning projects, not just, in fact, because someone's had a good idea. It's because we can demonstrate there's a fit with wider priorities. Well, let me talk about just 2 of those before I end. The first is to raise achievement in schools. We haven't always talked about that at the BBC. I think we felt that we wanted to stay so far back from the wider policy-making agenda that even to say we're there to drive achievement in schools sounded somehow political. I think after 25 years of both first Tory and then New Labour concentration on the national curriculum, it's okay for the BBC to be behind learning in schools. Though I do hope that in time, as the BBC sits down at the table with politicians and policymakers to discuss the curriculum, we can be a force for opening it up and for bringing greater creativity to the national curriculum, so-called. We make already available a wealth of multimedia curriculum-related content, and over 90% of schools use it, whether it's literacy and numeracy programs like Words and Pictures, Number Time, revision services such as GCSE Bite Size, or supporting new exams, AS Guru, supporting them, however, temporarily. And building on all of these developments, our proposals are for a digital curriculum, which I think may have been touched on earlier today. That's a core of interactive digital content to support the different areas of the school curriculum right across the UK, including here in Wales, for use by teachers, children of all ages and their parents at school, but also at home, via PC or electronic whiteboard, and intended ultimately, and frankly as soon as we all can, for broadband delivery. We think it's got the potential to transform teaching and learning in schools as a flexible tool which allows teachers to spend more time teaching and which motivates pupils to learn in new ways. It's devised both by the BBC's own programme makers and web designers, but also by the most creative producers and production companies outside the BBC, but it's paid for out of the licence fee. It's a partnership project, useless if it isn't, a partnership with the education profession, curriculum authorities, and others in the industry. It'll be a new service from the BBC and will therefore need approval from Tessa Jowell, Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. We're putting a detailed proposition to her at the moment. And we intend, and we already are, I think, to work closely with the Welsh Education Department, as with others across the UK, to ensure that this proposal gels with government plans for e-learning in the classroom. But the BBC's total offering is so much more than formal learning material. I think it's about enriching the curriculum through wider opportunities that do marry entertainment and education. Though I know it was asserted earlier in the day that, frankly, education's education and entertainment is entertainment, and edutainment is a no man's land. I don't really believe that. I don't say edutainment is the equivalent in every way of formal education. I do think it can bring lots of people into learning who otherwise wouldn't come. So examples, well, Teletubbies and Tweenies in the last few years, but now Exchange, Newsround, Technogames, and Tracy Beaker, which is our latest offering, CBBC, and I'd just like to spend a few minutes looking at how that's working. Tracy Beaker, as many of you will know, is a book for 7 to 11-year-olds, and it's written by Jacqueline Wilson. It's read at home by kids, along with many of her other books, but also at school. Tracy lives in a children's home. She's naughty, she's lovable, she's lost, tough. She loves creative writing. She fantasizes about her mother, who she believes is a Hollywood actress. She's not. She was just the mother who put her in the children's home. And the book's been dramatised for BBC One. It's transmitted on CBBC on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:25. It combines film and animation, and the programme is regularly watched by an audience of 700,000 children. That's over a third of the available viewing audience of children under 15. Just to give you a feel of it, I've chosen a clip which shows Tracy and her friend Peter watch from the window as another kid in the home, Justine, meets her father.
Hello. You can come out now. Duke has saved you some tea. And Jenny says to remind you that you still haven't apologised to Justine properly yet.
Haven't I been punished enough?
Nice try, kiddo.
Aren't you coming out? In a minute. Don't see why she made a fuss. He's nothing special. Brother have a dad like that who visited than no one at all. Are you crying? Bug off, Breed. Tracy Beaker never cries. It's the dumping ground dust. Gets my hay fever.
Tracy Beaker calling Justine Littlewood. Come in, Justine Littlewood. Tracy Beaker apologises in front of all these witnesses for the accident which happened by accident to your clock.
Happy, Jenny?
No, get off my car!
Jenny Edwards. Tracy Beaker apologises in front of all these witnesses for apologising to Justine Littlewood from the roof of your car.
Welcome back, Tracy Beaker.
It's like I've never been away.
I just want to say a little about the Tracy Beaker website that comes off the back of that programme and is signed off the end of the programme. Because it grew from the realisation that the enormous popularity of Tracy Beaker could be used to stimulate learning in creative writing and to get children of all abilities and backgrounds to learn more about friendship and feelings. See if I can get through to the next step in the website. I shan't stay long if I can't, but it'd be good if I could. Here we go. What this site does is it envisages its use at home with parents, not just in school with teachers. And I won't try and show you everything in what needs to be a short presentation, but if I can just show you something of the educational aims behind the site and hope that it speeds up its journey through the web as I do so. It's really about encouraging kids to write creatively. It's deeply inclusive, and it manages to do all of these things through a very simple principle of mixing fun and education in continuous adventures. Now, I've hoped to choose one of 8 learning adventures to illustrate how the principle works, which is actually about Tracy on safari, but I'm beginning to fear that, for whatever reason, perhaps the whole of Wales has gone onto the web at the same moment, or there's a colossal influx into our discussion room from around the world, I'm not going to be able to make this happen. So, assuming I can't, it always does that. Let me see what happens next. Let's go to the second of the adventures. Because what it's going to be doing, I hope, is showing how you can actually create a short cartoon for kids, where they're creating their own animation and text, and then can play back the whole thing to their heart's content. So let's see what happens next. I know from experience that this is a truly slow bit, so this could take me a while, and I won't take a while. I think I'm going to have to ask you to take it as read from me that it's the most exciting thing I've worked on. Oh, here we go. Every time I give up, it sort of comes back to me. I've got sound there. So the first thing I get to do, which I do sort of 4 times a day with my 6-year-old daughter to see if I can get any better, is to trace the outline of this lion. And I know from experience that if you go off the track at all, you pay for it. So rather than try again or go to the next animal, I'll just say I'm finished and move on. And that should set me up to show you the cartoon sequence, which is what I'd like to do. I'll try and get out of it before it embarrasses me by coming back. Just at the moment, I've given up on it. I'm sorry I couldn't show you that. The vagaries of the net still plague us. But the idea is to create a dynamic cartoon. The kids do it themselves. It's clearly hugely good fun. It draws on the kids' familiarity with and love of cartoons. And it draws them into the excitement of the cartoon creation. It gives them a sense of power and ownership and turns their work into a movie which they themselves have created. There's also a special device for teachers which enables them to create a virtual classroom environment. It creates an individual account. Teachers can build and determine a list of activities for pupils to complete, and the pupils can then complete those activities at their own pace, yet their progress can be monitored by the teacher. And it brings it into the classroom in a formalised way and helps teachers use it firmly within classroom practice. Edutainment is an awful word. I think it's the right concept. It's a strong aspect of the BBC's programming now for children. And of course, our 2 new digital channels, CBeebies and CBBC, have it at their heart. And those channels are already having real impact. The weekly website hits have reached well over 1 million to CBeebies for little ones, and nearly 2.5 million to CBBC. Next up, projects involving participation in the arts and in sport. That's the children's objective, how we can tie in with wider priorities for the country as a whole. Just a little now on adults and how we might develop the skills of the workforce. Our most important new project, SkillsWise, is a highly interactive website which is growing into a big adult literacy and numeracy resource from the BBC. We've developed with government, Adult Basic Skills Strategy Unit and the Basic Skills Agency. It's targeted at adults whose skills are at or are near level 1 in the new national standards. It supports people in brushing up on their basic skills wherever they have an area of need. It can be used online via BBC Interactive, 24 hours a day, free of charge, wherever there's internet access. But many learners do prefer to discover what's on offer through guidance of a tutor, so we're developing material on the site for them. It's been live since November, but we're going live in a month's time with a wider national launch. There'll be a special SkillsWise season on the Learning Zone on BBC 2 and a series of short daytime programmes on BBC 1. Here's a taster of what SkillsWise offers and and how it's already being used.
Log on to the SkillsWise homepage and there's a choice of where to go: words, numbers, or the section for tutors. Let's take a glimpse at the words section. Here there are activities to improve spelling, reading and writing skills. You can choose a specific topic to practice, like plurals or adjectives for example. And once you've chosen, you'll be offered a range of activities. For every topic there's a fact sheet with explanation and examples, a highly interactive game, quizzes to try out, and worksheets to print out and practice. And the worksheets and fact sheets build into a file for students to keep. You can also choose a level which is right for you. The Numbers site has a similar structure. Activities include handling money and using measurements, all linked to the adult curriculum. Sue, a tutor at Carshalton College, uses SkillsWise to reinforce what she teaches in the classroom. The site's straightforward format helps students find their way through any topic.
They're given some options. They can look at fact sheets which explain the skills for them. They can look at games which they can practice their skills on, and they can look at quizzes which they can then test their skills.
Night.
They quite like Silent Invaders, which is a Space Invader game.
Yes. Night.
Using silent letters. I think they like that because they can get quite aggressive with it if they want to, by shooting down the aliens who are coming to attack the world.
Once you get the bug, you want to do the next one, and the next one, and then you want to try something different. You want to see if you can do something different. And when you can do it, you think, yes, I can do it.
Paul runs his own business in London.
Superb. Thank you very much. Bye now. The skills I need to improve are my English, basically spelling and composition of letters and grammar, so that when I'm sending out letters to suppliers or customers, it makes it easier for me to sort of do them. The main reason for me to learn to improve my spelling was when my young son come home and was asking me how to spell certain words that he was getting for homework, and I was not able to spell them for him. Prompted me to actually go and do something about it, so that I can actually help him with his homework and also help myself. The good thing about it at home is that you can actually, in the evening, if you've got a spare hour, 2 hours, whatever time, you can just log onto the website, get the site up and just spend an hour to improve extra tuition, basically. The look, cover, write and check I enjoy, because the spelling is the main problem I have, and it gives me, I can actually see the word printed before me, visualise it in my mind, then cover it up, and then have as many goes as I like to try to complete the word. When using a computer, I'm very basic, as in when I type I have to use one finger, so from that point of view, anybody who has got very limited access or experience on a computer can actually use the site. So what words have we got spelled today?
So, Rosie Meir, the BBC's Learning Link advisor, do you just want to stand up for a second, Rosie? For Wales and the southwest of England, she can offer you more help and advice on SkillsWise. And, SkillsWise follows hard on the heels of Becoming Webwise, which is adult IT literacy. Becoming Webwise was developed in conjunction with the curriculum authorities. It was devised with the accreditation bodies, available at colleges across the UK. It's actually offering a level 1 module. It's already achieving up to 850,000 page impressions a week, 50,000 inquiries to the helpline over the past month, and 4,000 people took the test, that level 1 test, just last week. Something we're very proud of and slightly humble about, to see that you can make an impact of that sort. So that, looking across 2 national priorities for children and for adults and their basic skills, gives some sense, I think, of what the BBC can do to underpin wider national priorities. We talked about this session as being called Imagine Journeys into Learning, and I hope you can see that in many respects we are well beyond the imagining stage. with the support of partners and the benefit of new technology, we're beginning to extend the boundaries of what's possible for a broadcaster to do in the field of learning, though there is, as you can see, a great deal further still to go. But the prize is a really big one. The prize is to infuse all the BBC's mainstream services with interactive learning. No longer to see the BBC's point, raison d'etre, as an education broadcaster, as simply doing 100 hours of television a year and shoving them somewhere in a hard-to-watch place overnight on BBC Two. It's about taking all of the BBC's services and underpinning them with rich interactive learning. And if we get that far, we'll have made, I think, a bigger contribution than we've made before in education to the country's needs and gone a long way to better justifying the BBC's public funding. Thanks for listening to all of that, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.